Welcome to the PWHG podcast, the show dedicated to helping hockey families navigate the journey of off-ice training and preparation. I'm Dr. Zach Rourke, founder of PWHT, and I'm here to answer your questions and provide actionable tips to help you reach your potential. Each episode is bite-sized, just 10 minutes, and packed with information you can start using today. As always, if you have a question that you want answered, reach out to us via Instagram at PWHTMN. On today's episode, we're diving into in-season training, specifically what kinds of exercises should you be focusing on to maintain your performance without overtraining. By the end of this episode, you'll know how to structure your in-season workouts to get the most out of your training while avoiding burnout. Okay, here's the key concept. When it comes to in-season training, the key is to focus only on your best exercises. Now, obviously, what's the best exercise? We'll talk about that, but these are the ones that deliver maximum impact for strength, power, performance, and injury prevention. Okay, so if you go back to a different podcast, I think it's, let's see, maintaining, should I lift weights in the in-season? We talk about your sets and your reps and if you should be lifting weights, and that depends on your schedule and all that kind of stuff. And I said you want your biggest, baddest exercises, your most sports-specific exercises. So this podcast is like, what does that mean? What is your biggest, baddest exercise? All right, here's how I look at it. There's a concept called dynamic correspondence. And if you've been reading our stuff or listening to me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about it before. But what dynamic correspondence is it's a measure of how much does your exercise represent your actual sport performance. So how similar is your exercise to hockey, right? Okay, so then how do you evaluate that? And I've kind of condensed down, this is all from some Russian sport or some Soviet sport scientists from like the 50s through the 80s. But I've condensed down their work, and I have three factors that I look at. So the first one is the force velocity curve. And what that means is how much maximal strength do I use in my performance? And how much maximal speed do I use in my performance? And if you look at the research on hockey, you're going to be somewhere in the middle of maximal strength and maximal velocity with a trend closer to velocity. All right? And the way that we figure this out is we look at ground contact time. And ground contact time in hockey is about 0.2 seconds during acceleration. And as you go faster and faster, your ground contact time actually gets higher and higher. And I don't need to bore you with the details there. But that 0.2 seconds of ground contact time means that we're going to be focused not on maximum speed, but we're going to be focused on like what people usually call like power, somewhere in the power speed area, okay? So what does that look like in the gym? That means that you don't want to use the heaviest weights you have. That would be maximal strength. And you don't want to go totally body weight all the time because that would be maximal velocity. You want to use loads that are relatively low, so like 30 to 50% of maximum. And you want to move those loads as fast as you can. All right. So if you use a relatively low load, maybe 30 to 50% of max, and you move it fast, then you are going to be in the same force velocity relationship that you would actually see on the ice. And if you're there, then what the gains that you make in that exercise will transfer better to what you actually do on the ice. So that's the first component, is force velocity relationship. We want to use moderate to light loads, and we want to move them fast, okay? The second piece is the movement pattern. The movement pattern that we train in hockey off ice is basically the skating pattern at the hip, okay? So when it comes to like the biggest bang for your buck exercises, you want the exercise to replicate the movement that you execute at the hip level as much as possible. And what my mentor, Jack Blatherwick, he talks about it as the ARE pattern, abduction, rotation, and extension. And all that means is that your hip is going to move to the side a little bit, and then it's going to rotate a little bit, and then it's going to extend at the end. Okay, and that's basically what you have to do for a skating stride. And so the exercises that you want to choose are exercises that are going to involve that ARE pattern, abduction, rotation, and extension. And what that means is that they're going to have to be single leg. You can't execute an ARE pattern with both feet on the ground. It's, to me, it's one of the main tenets of hockey performance training is we're really not doing very much at all double-legged because the mechanics of the movement pattern don't allow for it, okay? So your biggest, baddest exercises are going to be moderate weight, moved fast, and they're going to involve the ARE pattern at the hip, all right? The last piece is the metabolic requirements. The metabolic requirements are how do you get energy to the muscle for that performance, okay? The easiest way to think about metabolic requirements is to look at how much time you spend at maximum intensity and at submaximal intensity when you're performing. And what I have done over the course of my career is looked at all the papers that look at this, and then I've done some studies on my own that are not published, but just me taking data and crunching the numbers and kind of thing. And what we find if we aggregate all of that information is that hockey is a repeated sprint sport, and the sprints are pretty short. They're like 1.5 seconds to 2.5 seconds on average. Okay, so, and it depends on what paper you look at and what game you study and all that stuff. But it's like most of those averages will fall between 1.5 to 2.5 seconds of explosive high intensity bursts. And then most of the time on the ice, 60 to 70%, 60 to 75% of the time that you're on the ice, you're doing very low intensity movement. And that's when you're on the ice and play is happening, okay? So I know a lot of strength coaches that think that to get in shape for hockey, we're going to do a 30 or a 45-second, sprint, and then we're going to rest 90 seconds because that's what you do in hockey. And that is not true. That is not what you do in hockey. What you do in hockey is you have a burst of 1.5 to 2 seconds, and then you kind of glide or you slowly stride for 8 seconds, and then you have a burst, and then you glide or slowly stride for 12, and then you have a burst, and you keep repeating that throughout a shift. That's a totally different metabolic profile than going as hard as you can for 30 to 45 seconds and then taking a 90-second break, okay? So we want our exercises to match based on force velocity curve, movement pattern, and metabolic requirements. And so what that would look like the exercises that I like to use, we do some modified sled pushes where we use the same mechanics of hockey acceleration or the same mechanics of top end speed in hockey. And we do that pushing a sled. We like to do skating variations of lunges. I like even more to do Haydn variations. And again, if you follow Jack Blatherwick's stuff, I am totally in line with the exercise selection that he likes. I have been working with Jack for years, and I have adopted a lot of the methods that he uses. And for a lot of my career, I've just been sending videos to him of what do you think about this exercise for anything that I come up with. And so if you go to kind of his methodology and his thought process, I'm very much aligned with that. So Haydn jumps wearing weight vests, Haydn jumps carrying sandbags that are, moderate to light weights. There's something like 10 to 20% of body weight, depending on the level of the athlete. And what they focus on is jumping with hockey-specific patterns. Because the load is what it is, you get these matched force velocity curves. And then what we do is we choose the right set and rep scheme so that we get the same metabolic requirements that you'd actually see in hockey, okay? So that's what I look at when it comes to exercise selection. Your typical traditional exercises, your benching, your squatting, your deadlifting, maybe your Olympic lifts, if you like cleans and stuff like that, I wouldn't recommend them for a hockey player at any time. In season, off season, it doesn't matter. And the reason for that is not that they're not effective in the sense that do they make you stronger? Do they make you jump higher? Do they make you more powerful? Yeah, sure they do. If you want to get better at squatting, the best thing to do is go squat, right? A lot of people think that if you get better at squatting, that's what's going to make you better at hockey. And I just fundamentally disagree with that assertion, okay? What I want to do is I want to get better at exercises that have the same requirements that I have on the ice. And the requirements are, they can be looked at as the force-velocity relationship, the movement pattern, and the metabolic requirements. And when it comes to squatting, deadlifting, benching, all that kind of stuff, focusing on lifting heavy weights, it just doesn't dynamically correspond with the sport that we're trying to improve in, okay? So will that stuff make you stronger? Sure. And if you want to get a bigger bench and a bigger squat or whatever, that's great. You can go and do that. Is that the best way to become a better hockey player? No, it's just not. It's objectively not. And that just comes from all of the exercise science research that we have that points to how you can get the highest transfer of training from what you do off the ice to what you do on the ice. Okay. So to summarize, I like hide and jump variations. I like skating specific sled pushes. Something I didn't mention on there is we do a lot of Kaiser hockey specific rotation work. Hockey is a game of rotations. You should be doing exercises that match the sport in terms of force velocity relationship, how much weight, how fast are you using, how fast are you moving it, movement pattern. We really like to focus on the ARE pattern at the hips, and then the metabolic requirements associated with the sport, which is short bursts with short rest times in between those bursts, and then a longer 90-second or 2-minute rest in between a set of those short bursts. Okay, that's what I have for you today. If you're looking to learn more about how you can achieve your hockey goals, visit us at perfectworldhockey.com. While you're there, you'll find more podcast episodes, articles, and resources to support your hockey journey. If you're interested in taking your training to the next level, you can also schedule a consultation. We'd love to learn more about your goals and see how we can help with your off-ice development. Follow us on Instagram or YouTube at PWHTMN to join the conversation and connect with the PWHT family. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on the PWHT podcast.